Dr. Taylor. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it so much. I'm sorry we were running, I guess we're running about 10 minutes behind, 7 minutes behind. Try to stay on time. It's hard. I thought some of them at that last town hall were going to skin me alive because I couldn't stick around and answer every single question they wanted me to answer because I needed to get here. And then we ran into some of that construction between here and Camden Center where you get to wait for them to turn the sign from stop to slow and then go one lane. So I apologize for being a little bit late. Your time is certainly not less important than my time, so I apologize for that. If you wouldn't mind, at the beginning of every town hall, I would be honored to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As Dr. Taylor said, I've done a lot of town halls. I have throughout the years. I enjoy them. I think they're important. But the most important thing I need to say about the town halls is they wouldn't work without you. If you didn't show up, we wouldn't have much to talk about. So I am honored that you're here. This is my 43rd town hall this year, and it is the 25th town hall I have held since I got home from Washington for the August work period. So I have been all over the state, and one of the haters on Twitter said, well, you're only going to have town halls where you're popular. I'm glad you get the joke. And people ask, well, why are you going all the places you're going? Because I'm going a lot of red territory in Missouri over these last weeks. And I'll tell you why. Because I think I have to show up and show respect and listen. I didn't get elected to just represent people who agree with me. I got elected to represent everybody. And I don't know how you do that if you're not willing to go places where there's folks that disagree with you. So I'm really grateful that you're here. I want to give a shout out to law enforcement that's here today. Thank you very much, sir. One of the things I hate about the divisions in this country that have seemed to have really hardened over the last months. There are many reasons I'm disappointed about those divisions, but one of the things I really hate is this notion that we are divided by party against hatred and bigotry, or that we're divided by party in terms of our support for police. I think Republicans and Democrats all are against hatred and bigotry, and I think Republicans and Democrats are all united in our respect and support for law enforcement. Thank you. And please tell I was honored to work as a prosecutor for a number of years, so I had the chance to work shoulder to shoulder in the trenches, trying to put criminals in prison with some of the bravest and smartest and courageous police officers you can imagine. And you don't go into the line of work being a police officer to get rich. You do it because you have a sense of service, and you are brave because you're willing to run towards danger when a lot of people want to run the other way. So let me just first tell you, it's not as bad as it looks in the distance. Washington, that is. We haven't all lost our minds. You would be surprised how often we're working together, the Republicans and Democrats. There are bipartisan victories that occur every day. You don't hear about a lot of them because, frankly, what's the point of telling you good news, right? Well, we've got lots of bad news we can talk about. But just in the last month, we have passed into law a number of things that have had bipartisan energy and support. One of them is a bill that I sponsored to help members of the military that were subjected to mustard gas experiments in World War II. Mustard gas experiments by our own military. And then they were supposed to keep it secret for many years, including a very brave and wonderful Missourian who's 90 years old, lives in a nursing home up in Macon. He couldn't talk about it for 50 years because he was told it was a secret. And so he suffered all these health consequences and could never say anything. And then finally in the 90s, when they declassified the experiments and all these thousands of soldiers could once again talk about it, then they didn't have accurate records as to who these experiments had been done on and where they've been done. He'd actually had the experiments done on him at Camp Crowder down in the ocean. So all but 300 or 400 of these soldiers have died, these veterans have died. And so for the 300 or 400 that are remaining, I wanted to flip the burden of proof because Arlo deserved to hear from his government that they believed him. And so we were able to do that, and I was able to do it with the help of none other than my friend, Republican Johnny Isaacson from Georgia, who helped me get that done. And yes, I said that, my friend, Republican Johnny Isaacson. We actually are friends, and that occurs with some frequency that we're friends with people in the other party. Another good example of where we got something done recently that is on its way to the President's desk, and I'm confident that he'll sign it, is a bill done by 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans on the subject of hearing aids. How many of you have a hearing aid? Okay, so you know how expensive it is. And Medicare doesn't pay for it, and most private insurance doesn't pay for it. And so you've got literally millions of Americans that need hearing assistance that just simply can't afford somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 for hearing aids. So did you ever wonder why you can go in the drugstore and buy readers for, $4.99? Or why you can go online with your prescription for glasses and get really cheap frames, but you can't do that with hearing aids? Well, the reason you can't do it is because of regulation. And guess who liked the regulation? The hearing aid industry. They liked that regulation because it made it much more expensive for people to get them. So a bunch of us got together, Republicans and Democrats, and we just blew up that regulation. So what's going to happen here in about a year? What's going to happen here in about a year? You're going to be able to go into Walmart or Walgreens, and you're going to be able to get hearing assistance over the counter. And we believe, based on the data that we've examined, that we think we're going to be able to bring the cost of some hearing aids down to as low as $350. So, good news, actually helps people in their real lives, done on a bipartisan basis. Did you hear about it?
No.
No, you didn't hear about it. So, that's my point. That's way too good of news for it to be leading with the news. We got plenty of negative stuff to talk about. So I just want you to leave here knowing that there are a bunch of us, of both parties, of goodwill, intelligent, smart people that work hard every day, try to figure out ways that we can impact public policy, and not just to make a point, but to hopefully help you in your lives, hopefully make your lives better, more secure, more prosperous. And there is that work going on. How many of you have ever been to one of my town halls before? Okay, we got 1 or 2 hands. I'm so glad that there's so many of you that have never been to one. I got into trouble when I first started doing town halls. I had one down the Boot Hill, and a good old boy came up to me afterwards and said, "I think you screened those questions. I think you were only taking the easy ones." So I had to figure out a way to make sure that everyone was confident that we weren't salt in the basket and that we weren't trying to avoid hard questions. So the way we handle that is I ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to raise your hand if you are pretty sure under no circumstances would you ever vote for me. Okay, there's one. Kyle, would you do me a big favor? Would you mind holding the basket and drawing the questions out for me? That's great. Thank you so much. You can sit down and relax, and there's something in it for you, because at the end of the town hall you get the last question. Okay? Good enough? All right. If you pull 2 out, and then she can bring me 2 at a time, and that way we can go a little faster. We want to try to get as many in as we possibly can in the time we have. Okay, the first question is from Pat Dilday. What is being done to remove Donald Trump from office? Okay, so here's the thing. Seriously, I want to speak to this question. Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. And he is the president, and I respect the fact that he's been elected president of the United States. So what my job every day is not to fight President Trump, it's to fight for you. It is not to try to make a political point every day. It's to try to figure out how I navigate the current system to be as effective as possible for the people I work for. So that means I try to examine every single issue on its merit, not based on the party and not based on the politics. So, for example, Donald Trump's nominees for the cabinet, about half of them I voted for. I thought they were qualified and would do a good job. Secretary Mattis, I think, was a terrific selection for Secretary of Defense. I've worked with Secretary Mattis significantly as a member of the Armed Services Committee when he was a general. I worked with General Kelly when he was a general as a member of the Armed Services Committee. A lot of respect for General Kelly. I know General McMaster and how strong he is. And there are lots of other examples of selections that President Trump made that I agreed with. Now, there were some I couldn't vote for. I don't think Betsy DeVos has any idea what she's doing as Secretary of Education. And frankly, she's not good for my state. Because I'll tell you why. Because Secretary DeVos believes we should pull money from public education and put it in private education. Now, the vast majority of the private schools in this state are in St. Louis and Kansas City. The vast majority of my state, and there aren't choices of private schools. It's just the public school, which is the beating heart of most rural communities. And the idea that President Trump, especially, is ironic when you consider where he got most of his support in my state. The idea that they're going to pull public funding away from 9 out of 10 students in this state to give it to kids in private schools doesn't seem right to me. Because you know what? If there's a child that has a behavioral issue or has a disability or has problems and they show up at a private school, you know what that private school can say? I'm sorry, we don't want you. You're going to be distracting. You're going to take too much energy and resources. But in public schools, guess what we say? Come on in. We're going to do our very best to educate you. So I don't believe we should be pulling public money away from private schools like Secretary DeVos does. And frankly, who it's going to hurt the most is going to be the very areas of the state that supported Donald Trump the most. So that's my answer to that question. I'm going to work with him when I can, and I'm going to disagree with him when I think the president is got the wrong position on something. This is Chris McBratney, VA and LTC. What could be done to allow veterans to utilize long-term care benefits in their community and their family instead of requiring them to go to state-run facility miles away, which also costs the VA more? Chris, are you referring to the state-run veteran nursing homes?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as you know, there's not that many of them, and they are in fact not federal money. They are state money. Those are not owned or run by the federal government. Not every state has them even. So the question about whether to expand those state-run facilities would in fact be up to the state. And in terms of the long-term care money that's available, I'm not aware that there is long-term care money that is available to go anywhere. Are you talking about something that would be like Veteran Choice, but for nursing homes?
The other side of it is just being able to contract with the Veterans Association for any difficult, and it's really not an option in some areas. So from the federal standpoint, that's not.
Yeah. So are you interested because of a family member, or are you interested because you're involved with the nursing home?
I'm a nursing home.
Okay, so what you'd like to do is figure out a way to contract with VA to actually be able to add patients to your facility that were veterans.
Correct.
You know, we'd be happy to visit with you about that. I've never had that question asked before, but it's something that we'd be happy to take a look at. My military team was with me this morning because I was at Fort Leonard Wood, but Nick Rawls, who does all my military work on my staff, if you don't mind afterwards, if you'd give your name to either Kylie or David from my staff that is here, and then I'll ask Nick to reach out to you and talk to you about it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. 2 more, please. Now, I don't know what's going on between Kylie and the basket holder, but I mean, there's something funny going on. We better watch them like a hawk. What is your name, sir? Steve. Thank you, Steve. I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm trying to have some fun.
You're usually doing.
I'm not going to not in front of all these people anyway. All right, Jim Whale. Please give us your opinion on the right to work bill. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the right to work bill. Okay, in America, we have had something that's the envy of the world, and that's the middle class. You know how many countries there are that all they have is rich people and poor people? We don't have that in America. So why don't we have that in America? Well, one of the reasons we don't have that in America is that at a certain point in time, it's something that's very all-American. Workers organized and said, you know, we want to have better working conditions. And we'd like to have better wages. And we'd like to have workplace safety. And out of that, were born better salaries for working people. And that, in fact, created a consuming middle class where folks could maybe buy a bath boat or actually help send their kids to college. And we had wages that were high enough that we could actually say, yeah, in America, we've got a healthy middle class. And then globalization happened. And all of a sudden, companies were able, because of technology and travel, were able to move their companies to countries where they could pay 50 cents an hour, or sometimes even less. And so it created a pressure on wages in this country that is now manifesting itself with, well, let's figure out a way we can drive down wages. Well, I got to tell you the truth. I'm not anxious to be in a race to the bottom. I'm not anxious for us to prove that we can work for less. And if this was really about creating jobs, why has Missouri created more jobs as a state that allows unions than the states surrounding it that are right to work? We've done a good job creating jobs, even though we've allowed unions. So I believe right to work is right to work for less. I believe in the long run it hurts our country and it hurts the middle class and it drives us more into situations where we have the haves and the have-nots. So I disagree with right to work, and I'm hopeful that that Missouri reverses course on that. So, and I know many of you may not agree with me, but I'm not here to agree with everyone. I'm here to tell you honestly what my position is on things. So I am against right to work. Carol Kruger. Carol has the same question that a previous question had. She's not a President Trump fan, so I will not once again answer the question about how do we get rid of President Trump.
We vote him out of office.
Yeah, an election is the way we do that in America, right? We change parties, and we change parties in power, and we change presidents, and you know what the nice thing is we do it? We do it without bloodshed. And we do it without wars, and we do it without coups, and we do it without people taking over the military, and we do it while we respect the rule of law. Angela Oman, what do you expect to happen with health care? What can we expect for the mental health benefit? So health care. This is kind of, I can give a long version or I'll try to give the short version, and maybe there'll be other questions. I actually think we're at a good place in time right now to finally do what we need to do, and that is quit playing political football with health care. When we started trying to do something on health care, and by the way, nobody was trying to hurt anybody or do ill will. What we were trying to do is create a place people could buy insurance that didn't get insurance at work, and establish a few rules of the road so people didn't get so abused by insurance companies. That's what we were trying to do. And we had hearings, lots of public hearings, dozens of public hearings, hours and hours of hearings, and then we had a public markup of those bills in hearings with amendments, dozens of Republican amendments. And then we took it to the floor, and then we did something that kind of probably sealed the fate of the public being able to accept what we had done. That was, we passed it with just Democratic votes. So the minute that happened, it became political. The minute that happened, we started hearing repeal and replace. The minute that happened, everything bad with health care was the fault of Obamacare. I started making the joke that the Missouri football team quit winning because of Obamacare. Everything was Obamacare's fault. So now we try to knock on the door of our Republican friends and say, help us fix it. We need to change this part-time, full-time. We need to change how many employees. We need to maybe enhance HSAs. We've got things we need to do to make adjustments because this isn't working as well as we hoped. And the Republicans didn't want to fix it because it was a powerful political weapon. Repeal, replace, repeal, replace. Repeal. It was simple. Repeal, it could fit on a bumper sticker. So now they win. They've been repealing it for years. Now they win. They've got complete control of the government. And guess what they don't want to do? They don't want to repeal it. And the reason they don't want to repeal it is because our calls run about 90 to 10. Out of every 100 calls, about 9 of them don't repeal it. And I'm not used to those kinds of margins in Missouri. Just about everything's 50-50 in Missouri. And the reason they don't want to repeal it is because a lot of people got benefits out of it. So replace it. Well, they tried to replace it, but what they did in the House was going to make it much more expensive. And what they did in the Senate was going to make it about twice as expensive. For somebody who lives in Polk County that makes $20,000 a year and is 60 years old, it would have more than doubled the premium for that 60-year-old person that makes $20,000 a year in Polk County. So they couldn't get the votes even to replace it. They weren't ready. So now they haven't been able to do what they said they would do. We weren't able to pass a plan that could get the acceptance of the American people. So now, let's work together, right? Let's get a bunch of Democrats and a bunch of Republicans and try to repair what we have. And I've got good news on that front. There's about 50 members of Congress, half Democrats, half Republicans, that have developed a list of things that they agree would help stabilize the markets and stabilize premiums and make it better and reduce some of the regulations. Now we've got a bunch of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate that have reached kind of the same list. So we are at the beginning stages of what might actually be somewhat of a miracle. And that is finally thinking about the health care instead of the politics and actually working together, Republicans and Democrats. And I'm going to be right there in that room trying to make that happen because I believe very much that's the right way to do it. This is from Kevin Costello. Is there anything that can be done to roll back the onerous regulation placed on the long-term care industry? We are underfunded, but the regs keep coming. Yeah, is that my same friend back there?
I'm sitting next to.
Oh, okay. I think that, it's hard because, regulations are one of those things that's like Goldilocks. Is it too hot, is it too cold, or is it just right? I remember Governor Brown back when he was in the Senate, all he did was rail against regulations. And then they had a young man who was decapitated on a water slide in Kansas. Remember that last year? And guess what the first thing the governor said? We need to look at a regulation. So, and one of the challenges, of course, in the long-term care industry is that it is about the care of human beings at the end of their lives when you have a lot of challenges. But there's also, not that you guys are, but there has also been situations, especially when homes are underfunded, which exacerbates the problem. They get understaffed, and the care level sometimes drops in a way that is heartbreaking to people. And so how you find the right sweet spot on that is really the challenge. I'm always happy to listen. I try to listen to any industry that comes about regulations, and if you have any specifics that you want to bring to our attention in my office, your association does a good job. I'll just tell you, Nikki Strong and the others that work on trying to make sure. Now, let me just say this about that. The thing that worries me the most about some of the Republican plans is that they thought it was a really good idea to cut Medicaid. And I really hope that you in the long-term industry, especially in these small communities, because there's way too many people out here that actually believe that Medicaid is somehow giving insurance to able-bodied adults who don't want to work in this state. They can't get Medicaid in this state, able-bodied adults. Medicaid in this state is a very stingy proposition that only goes to children and disabled people and the elderly. And what these gentlemen have in their homes, they don't have lazy people that didn't work all their lives. They maybe have a man that worked really hard all of his life and maybe saved up $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 and then got diagnosed with Alzheimer's when he was 70 years old. And before you know it, he had used up all of that money trying to stay in his own home with home health care. And he's got no more money. Now in our country, when you run out of money, and these are people that are worked hard all their lives, we allow you to go to a long-term assisted living facility, a long-term skilled facility, and get paid by Medicaid. But they're doing with a Medicaid reimbursement, what is your a daily Medicaid reimbursement now? 130, 140?
I'm 142, but I'm at the low end of the spectrum.
Okay, $142 a day, and he's expected to care for someone with Alzheimer's 24/7. Nursing, medical consultations, nutrition, hygiene, everything. Well, you think you get a pretty good deal if you in Kansas City or St. Louis if you can get a hotel room for $142. Now imagine trying to add in all the other things. So if we decide the way to somehow cure the ills of our debt is to continue to cut the Medicaid program, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dramatically affecting the ability of nursing homes in rural communities to stay open. You're going to have to drive a long way to see your loved ones. Or we're going to just put up a sign and say in America there's two standards of care. If you have money, you're going to get good care when you're old. If you don't have money, well, good luck. And that's what these guys face every day with the challenges in terms of their budget. So when people are advocating for the Medicaid program, don't see in your mind somebody who's trying to sop off the system. See in your mind somebody who's disabled, who's able to contribute to the community because they have some help. See in your mind that guy who's worked hard his whole life and ran out of money because he got Alzheimer's, and then maybe we'd have more support for the Medicaid program, which I think is really, really important. But we'll follow up with you about the regs. So. She keeps putting more in and she takes some out. We're going to catch her, aren't we? All right, Shirley Sylvie. If the government is shut down, will the check still be issued for Social Security, the military, or Congress? Well, it's a good question. It depends on what the Secretary of the Treasury decides. He would decide what bills would be paid first. I would assume the first bills that would be paid would be the interest on our debt. Because if we default on our debt, then all of a sudden we're going to have a run on our debt. And it would be catastrophic for our country. I would assume the next thing that would get paid would be Social Security and the military pay. And, the last time we had a shutdown, I didn't take my pay during that period of time. I gave it back. But I would think we should be way down the line, wouldn't you? I think everybody should get paid for us. Don't you? Yeah, I think so. We can't manage to keep the government open. I'd say we can't manage to keep the government open. We deserve time out, not our pay. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. And people need to understand that, shutting down the government, it doesn't really accomplish anything other than stress and uncertainty and diminishing our national standing. So let's hope we can negotiate and compromise. Let's hope we can come together and not have it all our way. I'm not saying that the way this should all come out in terms of the budget should be the way I think it should. I'm not saying it should be the way that Paul Ryan thinks it should, or Mitch McConnell thinks it should, or President Trump thinks it should, but I do think that everybody needs to negotiate and compromise. The President has a bunch of Republicans that are radically against his wall. Radically against his wall. Especially the guys in Texas. So you can understand why the guys in Texas are against this wall. Imagine if you took some of the most valuable farmland in Missouri and you lived there and you knew that a wall at that location wasn't going to do any good. But somebody said, well, they're going to build it anyway, and we're going to take your farmland. We're going to condemn it by eminent domain and grab it for the government. Can you imagine how upset farmers would be in Missouri if the government wanted to take their most valuable farmland? Well, that's what they're dealing with down in Texas. They're dealing with a whole lot of farmers that are upset about that idea. So, hey, and I'm not against any wall where it makes sense. I went down, I'm the ranking member on Homeland Security. Our jurisdiction is immigration. So I went down to the wall, down to the border to talk to the Border Patrol agents about what they needed. And what they said they needed, number one, was technology. And number two, they needed lateral access roads. And so I want to make sure we get them what they need to secure the border. Now, they said there was, maybe 40 miles of wall that would be helpful down there. But they were the first to tell me, we don't need a wall all along this sector. That would be a waste of money. So let's build a wall where it's going to help and with an understanding of what it's going to cost. And I'm beginning to think Mexico's not going to pay for it. Bill Horton, would you support linking congressional pay to the CPI, Social Security increases for disabled and retired? Absolutely. By the way, I'm not. I don't think we've gotten a congressional pay raise for a really long time, and I'm always putting in the bill to make sure one doesn't sneak through when nobody's looking. I think that we've got an awful lot of needs right now, and congressional pay should be way, 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 way down the list. So certainly I think that's fine. And I know the Social Security increases have been frustrating for people who live on Social Security because they haven't been very generous. But keep in mind, this is because inflation's been very low. That doesn't mean some costs haven't gone up. It just means that the formula by which that's figured, there hasn't been a lot of increases in that formula. So I know it's frustrating, but that's the way the formula works. Okay, next one. Okay. Tom Walters. Citizens Memorial Hospital has experienced $11 million in Medicare ACA sequestration cuts so far, with $47 million more coming in the next 9 years. What can be done to protect rural hospitals from further cuts? Where are you, Tim? Yeah. Okay, Tim. I'm painfully aware of the pressure that hospitals are under, particularly rural hospitals. That's why I was so bitterly disappointed that Missouri didn't take the Medicaid money that you were all entitled to. You pay federal taxes. And in the ACA, there was billions of dollars that was targeted to exactly the needs that this hospital has. And that is making sure that more people don't show up at his door with a traumatic injury or a chronic illness, and they've got to take care of it in the emergency room whether they've got insurance or not. So the level of uninsured care is brutally difficult, particularly for rural hospitals. And that's why they are so dependent on Medicaid and Medicare, because of that. So I know we've got some stuff coming up in September in terms of the dish cuts, in terms of some of the special programs that particularly are designed towards rural hospitals. And there's a bunch of us that have kind of coalesced around doing everything we can to get the right language passed before the end of September so those cuts don't come down the road. So it is, and I know you're working under very difficult circumstances. So if we could get this ACA stabilized and maybe convince the folks in Jefferson City. I mean, I used to joke and say, why don't they call it the I Hate Obamacare, but we'll take the Medicaid money. I mean, I wanted them to name the bill that, right? And then that way they convince all their constituents they hated Obamacare, but we'd get the money that Missourians were intended to get and that you all have paid taxes for. You think that money didn't get shipped off to California or New York instead of Missouri? It was really too bad. Okay, Denny McComb. Is there anything in the works to help people in the gap for health coverage under 100% of poverty in states like Missouri where Medicaid has not been expanded under the ACA? That's the other thing, is creative. There really wasn't ever a belief that states, because of politics, would refuse to take this money. So the program was designed, and the cuts to the hospitals were designed because they weren't going to have as much uninsured care, because Medicaid was going to be expanded. So in Missouri, when they refused to expand it, people found themselves in the weird position that they were not qualified for Medicaid, and they were too poor to be able to go on the exchanges and get subsidies. Did you hear what I said? They're too poor to go on the exchanges and buy insurance with the subsidies. So we created this gap that in Missouri was tens of thousands of people that were in this no man's land. And so we are trying to work on when we're doing this repair, we're trying to look at the dichotomy between the states that expanded Medicaid and those that didn't, so we can alleviate that gap. Not penalize the ones that expanded, but also I don't want to penalize the states that didn't expand, since that's my state, right? As cranky as I am at those guys in Jeff City for not expanding it, Kylie, you should just stand up here. I love watching you run up and down, God love you, but... All right, Ann Stewart, can you discuss the situation taking place about removing the Missouri State Senator from office? Yeah, I can. So, sometimes it really isn't about your political party at all. I found out what this state senator had said on Facebook, and my staff brought it to me. I was doing town halls, and they pulled me aside after a town hall and said, this just hit, that this state senator said that she hoped someone would assassinate President Trump. And I don't know what other offices do, and there was a little bit of a, we should talk about this. I go, no. There is nothing to talk about. Write this down. I condemn it. It is outrageous, and she should resign. That simple. And I believe that. I believe that. There is no place for someone who is an elected official ever advocating violence against anyone, much less the sitting president of the United States. So I have said I want her to resign. Most of my party has done the same thing. The state party has said it. Other state senators have said it. African-American congressman from St. Louis, Lacey Clay, has said it. So this is not about political parties now. This is just about whether or not she's going to do the right thing. It will be up to the state senate to decide whether to expel her from the Senate. I'm still hopeful she'll resign before that occurs. But I would kind of, at this point, be surprised if they don't vote to expel her. So, this is from Overella Combs. Is there any progress on fixing ACA? We kind of talked about that. More? Okay. So, we put these down so I don't get confused which ones I've answered and which ones I haven't. Okay, Troy Maxwell. How do you feel about the effectiveness of President Donald Trump? Troy Maxwell. I'll be honest with you. I've been disappointed at his tone sometimes. I've been disappointed at some of the name calling. I am worried about the demonization of the press. I've been honored to be in public service for a significant amount of time, and I can't tell you how many times it's been the press that has figured out wrongdoing, found the people that were abusing or violating the public trust, found money that was being stolen or wasted. We have one of the best journalism schools in the country in Missouri. People come from all over the world, and particularly all over the United States, to study journalism at the University of Missouri. And the people who do it, they don't hate our country. I mean, that's outrageous that the President of the United States would say that journalists hate our country. Of course they don't hate our country. And I just don't think when the press is saying things you don't like that you demonize them. Believe me, I've had opportunities, I've typed it 10 times, because sometimes they don't get the stories right, and you feel very, very much victimized. But you gotta just like kind of